Hey garden people, Happy New Year. If you're like me and you live on the outskirts of Phoenix, the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019 was pretty devastating on plants. My yard saw back-to-back temperatures in the 20s, mid to high 20s. Tropicals can deal with that for a short period, but to have that day after day after day, they just aren't meant to tolerate that. So things are looking pretty rough. I did mulch heavily as much as I could before the frost. I tried to take measures to increase the temperatures a little bit, put some burlap, around this Royal Poinciana, and I draped some Christmas lights down low. These are the C9 that give off some heat. But even that wasn't quite enough to, protect the canopy of the tree. The leaves are all dried, completely desiccated. But I think this tree is going to survive. This has been in the ground for 3 years come spring, and it's developed a nice trunk. If you have stone fruit, this is going to be a great year for stone fruit because we've achieved the chill hours they need to really set fruit. Citrus didn't seem to be affected too much. This is my 6-year-old frankincense tree, and it too is pretty established, but its canopy of leaves also, you can see, are withered and dried out. I didn't protect this tree at all. While a mature frankincense like this can take it, I'll show you what I did with my small container plants at the end of this video. It's probably my most depressing tour for you all, but I just want to show you what plants, took it and which ones didn't. This is a type of guava. I'm not really sure what it is other than it being pink, tropical pink. You can see it's just completely crunchy with burn. But down here, at the very base, you can see it actually still has green growth. It's been protected a bit from the upper canopy. Some of these branches, you can see it just kind of broke there. It might have to be pruned, but you don't want to prune them now because I believe we're going to have frost again in January and February. Loquat's fine. Flowers are fine. If you have microclimates like I have on this guava tree, you can see it really is pretty much unharmed. At the very back where it's more exposed, it does have some dieback, but for the most part looks untouched. The sapote, this is a merino sapote. This one is green. It's looking great. It could take the cold. It does have some protection though from the jacaranda. Okay, plumerias really are not cold tolerant at all. And what you can see happen to this one is there's a red sap oozing out of the top. When I squeeze it, it feels a little squishy. And what this is it's branch rot. And that happens from a combination of cold and wet, which we got. We got rain and then we got freezing temperatures right after that. The ice and all that settled on this was also uncovered. It couldn't take it. Not back to back. So while you don't want to prune any other tree in your yard because of more frost coming, you want to wait till spring when things start budding out to know what to prune off and what to keep. Plumeria is a different story. If I leave this branch rot is gonna start descending into the main trunk and it'll rot the entire plant. So what I'm gonna do is cut this back to clean tissue and then seal the wound. My soursop, mountain soursop, is completely torched. It actually set its first flower here. I think this tree will survive. It's pretty large. The trunk is substantial enough, but the smaller limbs will have to be trimmed back in spring. Now this is my worst of the guavas. The honeymoon variegated guava is just completely torched. Looks like death. I heavily mulched this, so I'm hoping at least at the base it was protected enough. You can see it's still got, you know, green showing under the bark here. So these smaller branches up here might have to go, but this one definitely is more cold sensitive than other types of guava in my yard. So this took a bigger hit. This is a type of Annona. It's looking pretty fried. The branches are still malleable, so he'll probably survive. The Barbie Pink has some damage. All the new tips that came out, you know, froze back. This is a nice microclimate though, so these trees didn't take as much of a hit as they would if they were exposed. It's very dense in here. And then the neighbor has a palm tree. This is the white guava, and you can see this one's a bit more badly burnt than the pink. And I find that to be true generally with white guava. It's a little bit more cold sensitive than the pink variety. This is the New Mexican cream. Just to protect the main trunk, I used pipe insulation. I think this tree will survive. It actually doesn't look as bad as some of the others. Maybe the mulberry here helped protect it a little bit. These bananas are toast, but actually there's an extensive root system down below. But again, you don't want to cut this back. It looks depressing to see all this burn, but leave it because it is protecting that main stem. And even this will, I think, shoot back with growth. Malaysian guava is out more in the elements, and it's looking pretty bad. But the branches are still pliable, so I think it'll make it. See, the figs are all dormant. There's no harm to them with the cold. This olive tree actually looks like it's put on new growth from the cold. You can see my other Royal Poinciana is looking pretty bad. Similar to the one near the lawn. You can see the leaves are just dried, completely desiccated. Did the same thing here. Some Christmas lights around there. It's too big to put a cold frame around this, so this is what I did just to get it through. And some burlap wrapped around the main trunk. This curry plant, even though they're pretty cold sensitive when they're young, I was really surprised this one took it. But again, it's in a microclimate here. All these trees merging in. This Tikal guava looks the best of all of them. Its fruit still looks like it's hanging okay. Mine are minor damage to the leaves. Oh, and one tropical that does really well. Eugenias in general are going to do just fine in cold. They're good down to the lower to mid 20s. Cherry of the Rio Grande actually put on new foliage with the cold. Looking nice. Citrus is all fine. Bamboo is fine. Mango, however, it was just about to put on some new growth. You can see it had these nodes it was pushing growth out of. New leaves, and they completely froze back. It's discolored, and it can take a couple weeks to see the full extent of cold damage, so it might actually get worse than what I'm seeing right now. With plumeria, it can take up to 21 days. I have some more tropicals over on the side of the yard. The longan I didn't bother protecting because I've seen it take the 20s fine. You can see there's burn on the brand new foliage coming out, but for the most part this tree looks perfectly fine. This is the Kahala variety. Not all longans are this cold tolerant, but this particular variety seems to be. So this one's going to be fine. This Black Beauty, Black Sapote, Chocolate Persimmon is looking completely burnt. These leaves are black. You can see the stem has turned black in areas. I'm hoping the main trunk will get by. This one I'm minimally protected because again it's pretty large. I've got these 50-watt halogen lights kind of at the base. As heat rises, thought was it's hitting the ground and it'll rise up and keep it a little bit warmer. And I've got the burlap wrapped around the base of the tree. Out of my own laziness, I left the sugar apple out here, but I stuffed it under this black sapote and white sapote. And so far, yeah, the leaves are damaged, but it actually looks pretty good. This white sapote, you can see it's actually got new foliage on it. Now at the very top, it was putting out new foliage and that completely, dried out, burnt. But for the most part, it looks good. It is putting on tons of flower buds. So hopefully the cold hasn't damaged those. I went ahead and took some heroics with it. I put this up with stakes and PVC, just 4 corners, and then wrapped it in a tarp. And you can see it's looking just fine. This alone is not enough. What you also need is a heat source. So put in a 500-watt halogen light at the base of the tree. That's what kept it warm by like 15 degrees. It was quite toasty in here. And then I just take the tarp off. The tarp goes on top at night when we have freezing temperatures, and you can see I just letting that air out during the day. So that's one success story that I've had on my tropical. Out over here, this is on my west wall. This is an interesting little microclimate. It's very warm here. It's all in rocks. It's in a corner, the cinder block wall. And these plumeria completely uncovered. They're quite small. These were put in the ground last spring. And they're all just fine. I mean, they look a little ragged, but you can see their tips are still the way they should look. They're not oozing sap. The stems are firm. They look perfectly fine. Right adjacent is this mature desert sunrise, my oldest plumeria, and it looks awful. You can see it's soft and it's shriveled, wrinkled. The tips. Top is black. All of this has to be cut off. Even this is a little soft. You have to come all the way down to the trunk here to actually feel firm wood. So that's how far back I'm gonna have to cut this. Back to the trunk. But it's just interesting how, you know, these plants pretty much in the same area. What a difference a couple feet made. So I think it's also about the height of the plant. These are only about a foot tall, maybe 18 inches. This one's 3.5 feet. So it's exposed to colder temperatures. It's warmer off the ground than it is higher up. So these may have just had enough ground heat to survive. Okay, so now for the cold frame. Yeah, it looks pretty bad in here. What I wasn't expecting was 20s for, you know, close to a week straight. Plumerias would need to be above 32. And between the open seams that I didn't tape and the lack of heat from these 50-watt light bulbs, things did not get much warmer in here. If you're going to use plastic, you for sure have to use a lot of heat, because the plastic could actually be detrimental and trap more cold air than if it was just exposed to open air. So there's a mix in here on the plumerias. You can see some look fine, some look horrible. The ones that are smaller and closer to the ground do look to be in a much better state than the others. So I'm gonna have to come through here today, and for the ones that are like this guy where it looks torched and, you know, you've got these tips here that when I break, you know, no sap comes out of. It's all squishy. This one doesn't have any brown rot in it, but it's definitely going to have that in the next week to two, because this is not viable tissue. The fact that it didn't, you know, put any kind of sap out means this is dead. So I will potentially have to cut this thing back to, you know, the main trunk, which is totally solid and fine. So, lesson learned on this, I'll be taping the seams this weekend. I will have my halogen lights ready to go, probably 4,000 watts, to keep this warm enough for the next one. Raising your cold frame by 2 degrees is just not enough at times. I was expecting like 32, 30. I was not expecting 25. So I need something that's going to raise this by 10 degrees. This did do really well for the rain. It stayed dry in here, which is perfect. If you're running, you know, electrical wiring, you don't want wet involved, so that's a good thing. But yeah, that's my lesson learned. So you just saw a frankincense plant that I planted 6 years ago in the ground, and it's doing okay. For the smaller plants that are in containers, they cannot survive cold temperatures like mid-20s. So in your first winter, especially if you acquire the plant close to winter or in winter, you're going to want to hold on to it, keep it in a container, and do what I'm doing here. So I've got these plants in my garage. It's partially insulated and it stays between 60 and 70 degrees for the most part. I have a grow light above it, suspended on some chain there from the ceiling. So this is a special light. It's a Agro Sun full spectrum light. It's a T12, 2 light bulbs that I basically put on the shop light fixture. And this will keep them happy through the winter. Alright guys, so I will be doing an update in spring to show you what things look like. Hopefully everything survives, and it's just a matter of cutting back the damaged smaller limbs. So clearly mango, guava, black sapote, royal poinciana are some plants that really suffer in the cold. Plumeria, very much so. Other trees, surprisingly, are doing okay. Curry, Eugenia, I didn't show you the Suriname, but that's doing fine. Longan's another one that that you can grow with no issue in the cold. So a bit of a depressing video, but it's important to see what you can be successful with and what may not work for your climate.